for the first time in my life, I had to go pre-revenue and go raise money from investors. And so I actually met with 23 investors. And it's a difficult conversation where you're like, hey, I know I don't have any revenue, but give me $250,000 towards this business and have faith and confidence in me. And I did that 23 times and I raised 1.5 million.
But hold on, Shawn. There's one thing I got to bring back into the centerfold here. This is 2009. You're doing this?
Yeah, right.
You raised 1.5 on a company, a napkin company with a spreadsheet pro forma. And you did that after the biggest fallout in the financial world since the Great Depression. Wow.
Yeah. It was, I mean, so truth be told, I probably met with 60 people to get the 23. And I just love that you take action and you just go for it, right? You have to go. So like 1.5, like you said, like during the recession, still going through it, and have all these projections based on previous recession time, probably that showed me I was going to make millions. But if you were to get in a time machine and go back to that Shawn, who just bookstore manager's son, raised 1.5, I have a plan that shows I'm going to be a multimillionaire, and I have good people that have jumped on board with me. I felt like I was like the king of the world. I really did. I felt like I've made it. And I'm like, I changed it. My LinkedIn was a CEO now. You know, I was a business owner. I was an entrepreneur. I was in the game, and I had 1.5. And I, as you mentioned, I'm business partners with Kevin O'Leary. And what he says, one of his quotes is, in business, poo-poo happens, right? And for me, poo-poo happened over the next 12 months. So I didn't hit those projections that were in that spreadsheet. I didn't hit anything even remotely to what I thought I was going to hit in revenue. I didn't have good operations. Literally, if you've made a mistake in business, I probably have had something similar, and I made those mistakes. And in a 12-month period, I blew through, not by spending it myself. The 1.5 was gone. And I literally had $2,000 in the bank on a Thursday. And the reason why I know it was a Thursday is because payroll was due on Friday the next day. So to me, I was like, I had this group of people, my payroll was $3,500. I was $1,500 short, and I had $2,000 in the bank. And so it was a miserable Thursday night. It was really bad. I remember just sitting in my bed, just lying down on my bed. I didn't sleep a wink, and I just stared up at the ceiling, making animal shapes out of the ceiling. I just didn't want to face the next day, because I didn't want to have to sit down with someone and say, hey, you had faith and confidence in me. I was the CEO. I'm the CEO on this LinkedIn, and I'm also an entrepreneur, and it's embarrassing. And now I can't pay you. And sorry about, it's like, that's just so miserable. And so I didn't sleep, and I was praying for a miracle literally on Friday morning, and no miracle came. And at the time I had a business owner and a partner of mine, and we went literally to lunch, and nothing tastes good when there's a difference between problems and pain, right? The problem I had was in my business was failing, but the pain ran like physically deep. I mean, nothing tasted good. I had this pit in my stomach, and I've had more of these experiences running a business. I mean, you go through this stuff. It's the truth. And so Friday comes, and we go to lunch together, and we're sitting there, and I get a phone call from my controller, Denise, and she's like, hey, Shawn, I was digging through the safe, and I found $3,000 in petty cash. What do you want me to do with it? And I was like, I want you to hang on to that $3,000 in petty cash, and I will be right there. So I literally I screeched my tires. I drove back to the office. I picked up the $3,000. And as you know, cash, the cash is king, used to be anyways. And when you put the cash in, it's instantaneously in your account. It's pretty amazing. There's no hold. So I got the $3,000 to the teller, and I gave her the $3,000, put it in the account. And then we physically cut checks for every individual on my team. And I still remember, for whatever reason, it's logged in my memory, the picture of the check, the brown checks. And I wrote a contract to each one of those. And I remember drove back to the office, and I handed each person, I still remember handing each individual that check. And I made payroll by the skin of my teeth. And it was miserable, man. Miserable time.
And listen, anybody listening to this right now, if you own a business, have ever owned a business, or are looking to own a business, I just want you to know what you just heard more than likely has or will happen to you. I'll never forget when I just started money school. We had flip out, and we were, going into money school. Everything was new. Same thing. I probably had less than $3,000 in the bank, or maybe $2,000. I can't remember, whatever it was. Shauna, I remember, comes into my office like just ghostly white. And she said, "Chris, is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" She's like, "Because I just looked at the bank account," because I gave her access to see the bank account. And she says, I don't think my check's going to clear, because she got the check, but obviously the check doesn't draw until she deposits it. She says, "I don't think my check will clear. Are we going to make it?" And, as the CEO, sometimes you just got to put the proud face on. So I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no big deal." And it was a big deal. And I remember I went in and I took a loan from one of my life insurance policies. It was like the first thing I thought of. I just took a loan from that whole life policy, and I covered her payroll with that. And I took more than what I needed to kind of show her that there was like a surplus in the account. And just up till this year, I mean, this is going way back, but just up to this year, I made repayments from that company back to my policy well after that loan was paid back to the policy. And I did that just as a grim reminder of how hard things can get. So I think we've all been there. I'm glad you shared that story. But I see, here's the part, the cheat code that I have is I know the rest of the story.
Right.
So how did you go from barely making payroll, petty cash saves a day, to building a multi-$100 million empire?
Yeah. So I believe that the greatest motivator is actually pain and not success, personally. And so that pain drove me to make some real decisions and make some hard moves. One is I love good salespeople. If you get a good sales, Shauna's awesome. I love your whole team, but you've done it. You've attracted an incredible team, but I didn't have a good team of salespeople at the time. And I knew some friends that were salespeople, and I called them up on Friday. That Friday, after I gave the checks out, I called up some of my friends. I was like, "Hey, I have all these leads and great people to talk to, but no one to call them. Would you mind coming in and selling for me?" And they're like, "Yeah, I'll help you out like in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks." And I was like, "No, can you come on Monday?" And I convinced 4 people to come in literally Monday after their work and sell for me. And that week we had $4,000 in sales, which meant I meant another week of payroll, right? So that's number one. So I think good salespeople. There's bad operations people too. There's great operations people. There's great in everything, but good salespeople are worth their weight in gold. I think they get a bad rap, and they give the customer an incredible experience. So that was number one. I love sales professionals that bring in revenue. And then number two is I said, I've failed, and I have to admit that failure on my own. And I can't do it by myself. It's not, I've already proven the fact that I cannot do it without relationships. And so number two was I made a decision then and there that I would get out of my lane. I was knee deep in crocodiles trying to run a business, and my head was down, and I didn't even spend time with friends or any type of networking. And I said, I have to do that. If I can do that and bring on really smart partners in our business, they're going to bring in their relationships, and I can make this thing work. And to me, the second thing is what made me go on the run. I was actually able to pay off those initial investors plus interest back and go on this run. But it was only because of the relationships I brought in. It was not like my talent. It was really, I brought in incredible people around me, and they had incredible relationships. And that was what really did it for us. So that's why I have a deep, deep passion for scaling businesses through relationships.
Well, that's very important thing. And, I know sometimes, like online, cause I got a big social presence, people are always like, oh my God, you're amazing. Oh my God. What you guys, what you do, they always say what you do, cause it's just my face, but really I'm nothing without my team. None of what I've created, kind of like what you just said, exists without the team and the relationships with that team. And, I sometimes like I'll tell people what my top people make. And they're just like, oh my God, that's insane. You're paying them too much. I'm like, yeah, my top guy makes more money than I do on a take home basis. And they're just like, why would you allow that? I'm like, what do you mean? Why would I allow that? Why wouldn't I want every one of my people doing that? Because you have to want people to succeed. You have to give them the path and give them the culture to succeed. And the only way you do that is, like you said, relationships and understanding that sometimes as the CEO, you just need to get the heck out of the way. And I still struggle with this, Shawn. You know this. I don't so much struggle with getting out of the way. I just struggle with, I don't even know what they call this. I get out of the way and then I just go and create another mess. And then I get out of the way of that. And I put somebody there and then I go create. I don't know how not to create. And then I get some free time and I start thinking things are bad. I start thinking something's wrong because I got a little free time. And then I go and I create a new division and I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm buried. I almost feel like I have a sickness. I truly.
We all do that. I think everyone shares that sickness that's an entrepreneur. You have shiny objects, that come up and you're like, wow, this is an incredible opportunity, right? I've got to go after that. We've all fallen prey to that one, right? All of us.
100%. So I know,
I mean, to me, it's, again, goes back to relationships. If there is something else you want to do, there's a great book called Who Not How.
Yes.
And in the book basically just tells us that Dan Sullivan, we ask the wrong questions to entrepreneurs. Like, how do I do that versus who can do that? Right. Because if you have a really good who in place, then some of those other projects actually will work if you can have a strong, competent person running that area. But you can't be the who to all those areas.
No.
Right. It's impossible.
No. Maybe in the very beginning, you can be the jack of all trades, but that very quickly ends. And then every entrepreneur has to literally look at themselves in the mirror and realize that you're not the best at doing what you thought you were. You just need to get somebody better. And then a lot of times that person just shows up and they've been there the whole time, but something happens. Either it's just stress or, something at home forces you to, shift your focus. Then all of a sudden you realize that person's been there the whole time and they would have been far better at doing this. But I just think, our ego gets in the way. I truly think that's what it is. Ego.
I do too. I see it all the time with entrepreneurs. I meet with entrepreneurs every hour. I mean, on the day, and that's the most common thing I say. Like, who's doing that for you? Oh, I'm doing that, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing that, and they become a bottleneck. And you have to trust the members of your team, right? You have to give them the ability to manage and to lead, right? So what you just said was like incredible advice for entrepreneurs.
I love it. And then you did some other really smart things. So going back to 2009, it was a massive, I remember it. I almost went bankrupt. I was developing a strip mall for my retail, for my skateboard, snowboard shops while I was working in Wall Street. So think about that. I took a hard money loan out. I think I was paying them 15% interest to develop a strip mall. In 2007, I did this. And then that right before Christmas, the Great Recession hit. And that's when all the collapses started happening. And I'm literally running out of money. I exhaust my 401k. I got no money left in my policies. I'm broke. I'm one payment away from bankrupt. And Wall Street was the wrong business to be in during that period of time to try to make ends meet. And if it wasn't for Larissa, back then I don't think she was just my girlfriend, paying the utilities and the helping me with the mortgage and everything. I couldn't have made it through that. But the best thing that came out of the Great Recession, and this is where I'm pivoting to, was everything was on sale. Everything. Real estate, every single thing you could think of was deflated because of the recession, and it all went on sale. And I bring this up because I want everyone listening. I don't want you to think about the past right now. Okay. I want you to think about the next couple of years. You are about to have one of the biggest sales in your life, but are you going to be ready to go shop? Are you going to be ready to go, take advantage of the economic rollback, as I like to call it? Well, that's up to you, because you got to make the right decisions today